Let's talk about Marvel United, a cooperative card and miniatures game. Welcome to Brains on Games. I'm Dr. Brian McDonald. In this episode, we're going to talk about Marvel United, which is a game that's been around for a while, but there's a new Spider-geddon set that's coming to retail soon. And I was just in a store not too long ago, and I saw that they're selling a Spider-Man set that includes a Doctor Strange figure to go along with the last Spider-Man movie. So this is a Marvel game that I haven't talked about, and I love Marvel games. I'm showing you the X-Men set of Marvel United. I have both the X-Men and the original set, and I back the multiverse set. But Marvel United is a game for between 1 and 4 players. You can play 5 players if you do a 1 versus many, and you've got the 5th player controlling the villain. So you can go up to 5 players. There are solo rules as well. It works, on the box it says it works with kids age 14 and up. I think 10-year-olds, 12-year-olds can understand this one, especially if they have an older player sort of guiding them along, because it is a co-op game. Games take about 40 minutes to play. Let's take a deeper look at Marvel United by CMON and Spin Master Games. I've set things up here for a 2-player game with the neoprene mat, and the mat is a bit too big for the table. But when you're playing a game where you have to lay out cards in a certain way, and in this case you have to lay them out in a circle around the locations in the middle of the board, I love to have some sort of a mat to kind of guide things and keep everything organized. I've also, you may be able to tell, the components, the tokens are upgraded from the cardboard to the plastic tokens. Like I said, this is a cooperative game where you're playing as heroes who are trying to defeat a villain. It's a light game and it's not super complicated. There's some strategy here. It is fun to play and you do have to think about your moves. So it is strategic, but it is pretty light in terms of its complexity. It's certainly not as stressful or tense, although it can be pretty tense, but it's not as stressful maybe as Pandemic or those other kinds of co-op games. The heroes in this game are trying to defeat the villain, and you've got lots of options here. Even in the 2 basic sets, you've got like lots of the main characters from the X-Men. Beast is in the box, Mystique and Magneto. In this case, I've got Wolverine and Cyclops down here. You can see that the minis are big, and they're kind of those big head style minis, which I like. Boy, if I could paint miniatures, these would be minis I'd like to paint because they're a little bit bigger. I've set up a game. The villain in this case is going to be Sabretooth. Of course, Wolverine is going to want to go up against Sabretooth. It's very straightforward how the villain is controlled in this game. You've got a villain dashboard, which you may not be able to see on the camera, but I'll show a picture of Sabretooth's dashboard, which tells all of the rules and what's going to happen under different conditions. So that makes it very straightforward. It has the villain's health. There's a stack here. One of the things that I like about the plastic tokens is that they stack together a little bit like Lego blocks. And the villain has a deck of cards that will dictate what he's going to do. In Sabretooth's case, he wants to hunt one of the heroes. So at the beginning of the game, one of the heroes is going to be hunted by Sabretooth, and he's going to be chasing after him. The villain starts on the first turn by drawing a card and playing it into the circle around the outside. And like I said, the cards tell what he's going to do. In this case, he's going to move to the space where the hunted hero is. He's going to do whatever it says, whatever the BAM action is on his hero card, which in this case is deal 2 damage to a hero at his location. And if the hunted hero is there, that's the one who's going to get that damage. The heroes are going to lose and Sabretooth is going to win if he manages, well, in a 2-player game, if he manages to defeat that hunted hero twice. Regularly, it's going to be just 1 defeat where he takes that hunted token back. That's going to be the end of the game for the heroes. The heroes, though, what they're trying to do is defeat the villain. They can't attack the villain, and in a 2-player game, Sabretooth has 5 health, but it varies depending on how many players are in the game. Once the heroes have accomplished some missions, they're going to be able to start directly attacking and damaging the villain. You can't attack that villain until you've done something heroic around the board, and there are threats around the outside of the board that you might have to overcome. There are bystanders that you can rescue, or henchmen thugs that you might have to defeat. Each of the heroes also has their own deck, and the X-Men are lucky enough to have a card that goes into their starting hand. The mutants are thought to be pretty powerful compared to regular Marvel heroes. And just like with the villain card, you're playing one of your cards into the storyline. You've got a hand of 3 cards. You draw 1 card at the beginning of your turn. Now, I mentioned before, if Sabretooth is going to do damage to that hunted character, well, when you take damage, you have to discard cards from your hand. And if you discard the final one, you're knocked out. If your hero gets knocked out, he's not out of the game. He lays down his miniature to show that no effects can target him. The BAM action takes place, so the villain is going to do some crazy damage, and maybe there'll be some domino effects that result from that, and then you get to draw up 4 cards again on your next turn, and you're right back into the game. It's pretty fun, too, and an interesting mechanic in terms of how the hero's actions work in this game. So the villain goes first, then there are going to be 3 hero turns, and then the villain goes again. So 3 turns, and then the villain goes. Once the heroes accomplish one of their missions, the villain speeds up, and now there's only going to be 2 hero turns in between each villain card that gets laid out on this storyline here. And like I said, it is neat how the heroes act. So you're going to act by playing a card. The card might give you some special ability, and it gives you some actions that you can take. In this case, there's a move token and some heroic action that you can do. You might fill in one of these threat things, and once you accomplish you defeat a threat by putting tokens across it here, then you're going to accomplish one of those missions. Clearing threats is a mission. You need to clear 4 of them to get to accomplish that mission. But you're not just taking the actions that are here on the card, because you're going to be adding other cards to the storyline. So if Wolverine goes next, he's got his claws, so he gets to do 2 damage or to defeat 2 of those thugs. But he's also got this one attack token down here at the bottom. You're not just using that token at the bottom, you also get to use the actions from the card previous in the timeline. So as you alternate, you don't get to use the special powers. So of course Cyclops doesn't get to use Wolverine's claws, but now he has a move action and an attack action if he plays this card like this. And then of course, like I said, every 3 turns the villain is going to go, and eventually the villain gets quicker. As the players accomplish missions and clear threats from these different locations, they get a bonus at those locations. So in the case of the X-Jet, it says that they can move to any other location that they want to. So they might be trying to escape. Maybe they're moving towards Sabretooth so that they can attack him, but they might be trying to escape if they end their turn there. If they've defeated the threat at Xavier's Institute for Higher Learning, and they finish their turn there, they can draw until they have 3 cards in their hand. So they're sort of healing and resting if they get back to the X-Men school. So the locations are thematic, and they certainly do evoke that comic book feeling, especially with those big chunky miniatures. And play continues until either the villain has accomplished his goal, and in Sabretooth's case, that's defeating the hunted hero, or the heroes have managed to clear 2 of those missions and then defeat the villain. And as I said, with the heroes, each hero has their own deck. They play very differently. Each villain has their own goals in their own deck, and they play very differently. And it does feel different when you mix and match these various heroes and villains. What skills are you practicing, though, when you play Marvel United? Well, this is a game where you're budgeting your cards and actions. And so there's a bit of a spatial component here in terms of keeping track of the previous card, and there's locations around the board. But really, we're talking about executive functioning skills. The skills and behaviors you need to work towards a goal. You're budgeting your cards and you're planning ahead in order to defeat Sabretooth before he manages to get that hunted hero. And it does require some planning. Sabretooth is a character who can heal himself, so he regenerates over time. So you really do have to budget those actions in order to defeat him. Final thoughts about Marvel United. Well, this is a cooperative game that's easy to get to the table. It's easy to set up. It's easy to explain. The rules are straightforward. Once you understand the icons, there's nothing too complicated about this. You can make it more challenging. There are ways to make the game more difficult, but it does tend to be kind of an easygoing, light game where you're trying to defeat that villain. And the villains do play differently, and the heroes play differently. There's so many combinations, especially if you've got some of the expansion sets. Of course, I had to pick up all the Spider-Man sets because Spider-Man is my favorite superhero, but there's quite a wide range of heroes and villains here, and it is thematic. The artwork is great. The miniatures are great, especially if you've upgraded things with those tokens. They are a lot of fun. They do stack and they're very solid. So it does, and it has great table presence when you've got this big circular mat around the board with the storyline that starts to fill out as you play the game. So I think this is a great entry-level cooperative game that you can pull new players into. I will tell you, I have some friends who come to visit. I've got a million games on the shelf. Do you want to try Barcelona? Do you want to try something really strategic? And a couple of my friends are like, no, let's pull out Marvel United and try a hero and a villain that we haven't tried for a while. So it is a game that's just kind of fun and easygoing with that comic book theme. It's not, like I said, it's not stressful like Pandemic. Now, if there's a downside to Marvel United, well, there are a lot of heroes and villains, a lot of sets in this game. If you're a completist, if you're a collector, it's very expensive to get your hands on all of these. I didn't go the completist route. I had some heroes that I liked and some villains that I liked, so I have a couple of expansions, and of course, like I said, I grabbed all the Spider-Man ones. The best way to get your hands on the most flexible version of Marvel United is if you manage to find a Kickstarter campaign, because the Kickstarter includes lots of stretch goals. There's a huge box that came with the X-Men Kickstarter with a whole pile of heroes and villains inside. And one of the interesting things about the X-Men set versus the original Marvel United game is that some of the characters are anti-heroes and they can be played as heroes or villains. They just have different decks of cards that they use depending on which way you want to play the game. So it can be an expensive endeavor to collect all of these, but boy, what a fun game. And if you just focus on the heroes and villains that you want, if you can get your hands on them, maybe in those Kickstarters, Spider-geddon is coming to retail soon. So Spider-geddon is going to be based on the Spider-Verse comic as opposed to the Spider-Verse movie. But there are some excellent Spidey characters in that box as well. So I'm on the lookout for that one, because as I said, if I'm a collector, I'm collecting the Spider-Man ones. Before we go, this is a game that does, I think, beg comparison to Marvel Champions, which is a card game, a cooperative card game where you're trying to defeat a villain, and each hero has their own decks of cards, and you can get expansions for various heroes. I prefer Marvel United over Marvel Champions, and part of the reason for that is that it's easier to get this one to the table. The cards and figures are so well organized, and the organizer is very well laid out. And the Marvel Champions game, honestly, I like it, but it never hits the table because there's no dividers for the cards. And before you even play the game, you have to sort all the cards out and figure out what's what and make your deck. So there's way too much lead time in that one compared to this. And of course, I do, like I said, I like those big head miniatures, and if I were a painter, these would all be painted, and I feel like I should loan them to my friend who is a painter, and then I'd have some painted miniatures once he's done with them. But look, this is a really fun game. If you're playing with new people who are just getting into co-op, if you're playing with comic book fans, Marvel United is a good way to go, and there are expansions and new sets that pop up in stores quite regularly. If you have any questions about Marvel United or anything else to do with Brains on Games, you can leave them in the comment section below the video, or you can email me at brian@brainsongames.ca. Brainsongames.ca is the website. That's where future episodes will go, and the previous ones are up there already. Brains on Games is the Twitter handle and the Facebook page and the Instagram feed, so we're all over the place. And if you enjoyed this video and you want to be notified of future ones, you can head on over to YouTube and click that subscribe button. Thanks for joining me, and hopefully I'll see you next time.